Meera Bhogal, welcome to the show. How are you today?
I'm really well. Thank you so much, Elliot, for having me on.
The pleasure is truly mine. I'm very excited to dive into our topic of conversation today. But before we do, can you give us a bit of context about who you are and what it is that you do?
Okay, well, as I said, my name is Meera Bhogal, and I am now referred to as a menopause expert. Never thought that that would be something that would be a term that would be after my name. Many years ago. But yeah, I'm referred to as a menopause expert. I basically help women, support women to understand their menopause journey a lot better through lifestyle and holistic approach, but also raise awareness within wide communities, as wide and as far as I can go. So, kind of raising awareness, raising education and knowledge about menopause and what it all means, because every woman is going to go through it.
Absolutely. And did this all stem from your own personal journey with menopause? Where did it all begin for you? Because, like you said, you weren't going to take the role of the menopause expert, but here we are today speaking about exactly that.
I know it is. You know what it did? It did start for me all with my own journey. And actually, because of the journey I went on and the lack of understanding I had, and it was a fairly horrible journey. I just felt that I really didn't want anybody else to go through this. And the more I began to speak to people, the more I realized that there were so many myths about menopause, and it just wasn't something that was spoken about at all. It's just something I thought only happened to people who are in their 70s or 80s or whatever, old, what I would consider old. And as I'm getting older, I'm thinking that's not old either. But that's really what I thought. But the 10 years of my perimenopause journey, which I didn't know what was happening to me. That's the first thing. I really had no clue. It was very scary. It was very lonely. And it wasn't really, I'm 54 now, 55 in a few weeks, but it wasn't really until probably my late 40s, mid to late 40s, that I actually began to put all the pieces together and really understand what was going on, and then start to think about, okay, this has got to change, because people were saying things to me like, oh, no. If you keep yourself fit and healthy, you'll never have menopause, and don't worry, it'll be over soon. Or it's just a disease that happens to certain people or certain parts of the population, like the white population or whatever. And I was so dismayed by all of this. I just thought, no, this has got to change. It's really got to change.
I can imagine. And in terms of the experience that you had during those perimenopausal years, what did that look like? You said it was a pretty horrendous journey, and I can imagine there's many women who are going through it right now and maybe wondering what is going on with them as well. So can you share a little bit more about an in-depth look at your journey of what perimenopause looked like for you?
Definitely, definitely. So, just to start with, in my late 30s and early 40s, I would say 38 to 40, I started to notice some changes. But over the course of the next 10 years, I actually noticed different changes happening. So, I'll kind of go through all of those. And the symptoms that I experienced, some of them are very common to a lot of women, and some of them may be quite unique just to me. And there are lots of other symptoms as well. There are like 47, 50 plus symptoms that women can go through. So, for me, the first changes that started to happen were hair loss. So I started to suffer really dramatic hair loss, to the point where sort of in the front here, and it was literally on my 40th birthday, and I remember it very clearly. We were going out. I had a party organised in town, and it was all just very exciting. And I actually just stopped and I said, I don't want to go. And I just looked at my husband and I said, I don't want to go. And I was in tears. And he was just like, what on earth happened? And I was like, just look, I can't. I don't have the confidence because my hair, it's really thin around my crown, just in my front. And he was just like, look, he's lovely. He and my daughters have been the rock that have got me through this. But he just was like, okay, look, let's get you to the party and let's just talk about it on the way. Let's see what we can do. So hair loss was the first thing that I noticed. And then I dealt with that hair loss as an individual symptom. So I spoke to my hairdresser, I went and saw a trichologist, and I slowly started to get my hair growth back through the advice that the trichologist had given me. And then, again, that was kind of happening. And then at the same time, I was starting to notice some changes in my fatigue. I'm quite fit. I'm quite active. I was very into running, so lots of kind of half marathons and all of that kind of stuff, spinning classes. I was just getting a lot more tired than I would normally get. And then my joints were beginning to start to ache, and I just didn't it's really difficult to put a finger on it, but I didn't recognize myself. I just wasn't the same person, and I couldn't put my finger on it. So I went to the doctor again and, like, sort of, what's wrong with me? I don't know. And they were like, well, maybe you're just, let's do a blood test. Maybe your iron's a bit low, or this is a bit low. And for your joint pains, perhaps take some anti-inflammatories. And Okay, so we kind of did all of that. Wasn't anything showing up in the blood test per se. Carried on a little bit longer, a few more years, and then I ended up with really, really bad anxiety. And I am not somebody who suffers from anxiety or depression or low mood. I'm quite upbeat, I'm quite, kind of just get on with things really. I couldn't, the smallest things, I couldn't get on a train and go from A to B. It was just too much for me. I found going to work really difficult. I found what people were saying to me really difficult to process. I found going to work and dealing with kind of really normal everyday interactions very difficult. And at the same time as all of this was happening, I was suffering from really bad night sweats and poor sleep and really bad concentration and brain fog. I would be saying something or speaking and I could see the word and I could visualize that word. I knew what the word meant. Let's say a cow, right? I could see the word cow. I could see the cow. I couldn't get the word out. And it was just like, okay, now I'm getting Alzheimer's, or maybe I've got cancer, or maybe I've got a tumor. All of these things are going through your mind. And you literally feel like you're going a little bit crazy. And people around you, no one's joining the dots up. Nobody's telling you anything. I went to the GP, and again, it was, well, why don't you have antidepressants? Maybe that's what's going to help you. And, nothing wrong with antidepressants, but I just knew something inside me was telling me that is not what I need. There's something else that's happening to me, and I don't know what it is. And that's really when I started to do the research on it. Talking about symptoms, they kind of carried on even once I knew that I was going through now. I realized in my late 40s, sort of mid 40s, I suddenly joined the dots and realized I was going through something that could potentially be called perimenopause. My menopause journey carried on, and actually the symptoms just got a little bit worse and a lot less manageable. I began to get very erratic periods to the point where I couldn't leave the house, and again, work was impacted, life was impacted. My relationship with my husband was impacted and my kids, because, one minute I was I was just literally a mess on the floor, crying my eyes out. And the next minute I was just this happy, everything was fine person. And they were looking at me like, oh my God. And my husband often says, he didn't know who he was going to come home to. He didn't know whether he was going to come home to somebody just sitting on the floor crying, or somebody who'd managed to get everything done that day and was feeling really good. And so, there are a lot of symptoms, a lot more symptoms. Things like allergies, intolerances began to creep up with me. Things like sinus issues, histamine issues, they began to creep up. So I felt a bit like when I first got the what's called a symptom checker, a menopause symptom checker, when I first ever heard of this thing, and I got it out and I printed it and I looked at it and I ticked nearly every single one. I just thought, seriously, this is what is happening to me. And there was a relief in finally being able to think, okay, I haven't got cancer. I'm not getting Alzheimer's. I'm not going crazy. I haven't got depression and anxiety because there is a chemical reaction that leads to that. Or my joint pains are not because of that. My fatigue is not because of whatever. It's actually all of this stuff which is coming together and happening because I'm going through something called perimenopause and then finally menopause, and now I'm postmenopausal. But that's pretty much it. It wasn't easy. It was horrible. I couldn't run. The things I wanted to do, suddenly I wasn't able to do. I couldn't run because my joints ached too much. So, like, what do I do? How do I exercise? That was my kind of lifeline, was getting outside in the fresh air and going for a run, switching off to the outside world. Well, how do I find that? How do I find that peace of mind? So it was really tough, really tough.
Yeah, it sounds like an insane journey. And the biggest challenge here is that, like you said, you no longer had those outlets. Not only that, but you're still expected to do the exact same thing in terms of your work life, in terms of being a parent, in terms of just living and enjoying your life, but you're only just focusing on the things that need to get done. And they're hard enough. Like you said, getting on a train from A to B was hard enough. And then what happens then is that you end up only doing the functional things, if you're able to do that. And then you lose out on all the things that bring you joy in life as well. And, it's a really, really deep hole that you get yourself into, and then someone comes along and be like, yeah, you need antidepressants. Well, like, well, maybe I am depressed. Luckily, you had that intuitive voice saying, okay, it's not this, there's something else there. But I can imagine so many people being like, well, there's no other explanation, so it must be this, and what they've not realized is they're probably going through that. They're taking all the way the joy from their life. Everything else feels hard now. And it's just a terrible situation to be in. So I'm so glad that we're having this conversation. And I'm sure a lot of women listening right now will be like, I recognize these symptoms. And a lot of husbands and partners are probably also thinking, I recognize this in my wife or my partner. So we have to ask the question, where did you go next with all of that information? What did you do to get yourself out of that hole?
Do you know what, Elliot, though? I love what you've said. It's taking the joy out. And it did feel like a very joyless existence for a while. And I hear that a lot from women. It's that point where they've just got to where they're so desperate because there isn't anything that they're doing that is bringing them joy. So that was just a very insightful comment that you made, and I love that. And thank you for having this conversation, because yes, you're right, so many women will be thinking, and they could be in their early 30s or late 30s, it just doesn't matter. They could be thinking, hold on a minute, this resonates with me. It was literally one day when I sat down, I got to my yoga. I started taking up yoga again. I don't know why, but I just thought maybe I need to just do something different, and I started taking up yoga. I took up Ashtanga yoga because it's a bit, I would say, the most dynamic kind of style of yoga, and I'm a bit of an adrenaline junkie and a bit crazy, so I thought, you know what, that's going to suit me. And actually I still practice today, but the practice is very different. Once you get deep into it, you realize all yoga practice is based around breath. But anyway, I started my yoga journey, and my yoga teacher just looked at me, and I'm fairly flexible and all the rest of it, so I didn't have a problem. But I literally couldn't touch my toes one day, and I was crying just in the corner, literally broke down. And she said to me, she knew me by then, so I'd been going every day for about a year or 2 years, and she just said, "What's up?" And I chatted to her, and she said, "You ever thought about menopause?" And I was like, God, don't be daft. Menopause, literally, like, you must be crazy. I'm only 40 something. But I did. I went back and I researched it. And my husband's a pharmacist. And he just said, yeah, actually, why don't we look it up? So it was like, started looking up. Now, all the research that I could find was all around this one research study, which actually was the one that stopped the HRT, right? Because otherwise, I don't think I'd be having this conversation with you if this research study hadn't come about. And basically, the study was indicating, it was wrongly kind of, the conclusions were wrongly brought together, that actually HRT was linked to a higher risk of breast cancer. And the HRT that I was talking about, that I was introduced to at the time, would have been the one that was made from horse urine, so mare urine, right? And I was like, I am not having this. This is not happening. I'd rather go through what I'm going. I'm not putting horse urine inside me. Like, that's ridiculous. So, it was all indicating towards no, not having HRT. It's dangerous. I don't want to have it. So I then started to delve into, well, what can I do? And that's where I turned to what, as a South Asian person, I know really well, which is food, right? Our culture, we live around the next meals. We talk, when we're eating the meal, we talk about the next meal. That's how it is in our. So food is a massive, massive thing for us. And I just thought, okay, well, that's something I know. Let me go back into it. Let me delve back into food. What am I eating? What am I doing? How am I living? What's going on? And I couldn't find any research that helped me, A, as a South Asian woman, and B, about a holistic approach. What are the other things I could do? So I literally just started to explore and thought, okay, I'm gluten and dairy intolerant anyway. And I actually, about 25, 26 years ago, I went through about suffering from very bad migraines and becoming very unwell in IBS. At that point, again, turned to food. And I myself started to research at that point and actually realized that it was gluten, wheat gluten in particular, and dairy in all forms that were triggering me into being bloated, IBS, and all the rest of it, and migraines. So I'd already been on a journey of discovery with food. So I felt very familiar with looking at food and what it did. And I actually started to record my symptoms after things I'd eaten and after things I'd drunk and after things like exercise. How did I feel? What symptoms were worse or better? And through that, and through a lot of research to alternative places, so looking at things like, protein, fiber, fat, micronutrients like zinc, vitamin D, all of those things. Lots and lots of research into alternative, sort of not your usual, not therapies per se, but research, articles, anything that I could get my hands on. And I then created this regime, lifestyle system for myself, which actually started to help me to manage my symptoms. Not all of them, but it meant I could function a bit better. So I wasn't, it didn't take the symptoms away and there was this miraculous thing that happened. But actually, what was noticeable was women were coming to me and saying, you look like you're dealing with this really well. what are you doing? And I was like, really? Okay, it doesn't feel like I'm dealing with it well, but quite clearly it sounds like, it looks like I am. But I started to turn to, so realization very early on that alcohol triggered quite a lot of my symptoms, that excess sugar triggered quite a lot of my symptoms. And I don't mean just sugar in
Tea
the
and stuff,
spoons you
yeah.
add, but sugar like even things like bananas or dates or fruit would trigger symptoms. I actually also realized that I wasn't eating enough. I was eating way too little. I realized I was nowhere near eating enough protein. I wasn't eating enough fat. I was actually just doing the thing that I had been taught to do or influenced to do as I was growing up, which was just rubbish for me, my body and my brain. And then the realization that the yoga was amazing for me because it gave my brain calmness and space. And then the best thing of all, the strength training. That was like, I was that typical, I'm not going to do any strength training because I'm going to end up like Arnold Schwarzenegger, and I don't want that. And my trainer looking at me going, God, if you could look like Arnold Schwarzenegger, I would have performed a miracle. So, he was literally saying this stuff to me. So it literally was about a lifestyle change. It was about looking at diet and almost flipping everything that I knew on its head, which was just such a journey. Still is. I'm still on the journey. It hasn't stopped. I'm still there.
Yeah, I can imagine. And I love that transition that you've made. But I'm sure that I'm trying to find out here whether it was such a bad position that you were in that you were like, I have to do anything to make myself feel better. Because of something I hear a lot from the women going through this is that, they miss eating the same way that their family does. They miss the life that they used to lead. They miss, eating a burger and chips and ice cream on the weekends and not having to suffer the consequences both within their digestion and their body weight as well. So how did you mentally come to terms with it? Was it just that your reality was so painful that you're like, anything that helps is okay and I'm happy to kind of let that part of the past go? Or did you have some challenges with dealing with, okay, I can't drink as much as I'd like to. I don't feel maybe quote unquote as young anymore because I have to do all these things to like keep myself functioning. Is that a journey that you went through kind of mentally as well?
Yes, 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 yes. I did the journey I see so many of the women that I help go through. I did the whole thing of, okay, I'm going to do it for about 8 weeks or 4 weeks or whatever it is, and then I'm out for somebody's birthday, or I'm out with friends, or whatever it is, or the kids come home and we're going, or we're on holiday, or whatever, and then it goes crashing down. And what would happen initially is I wouldn't notice it so much. I wasn't aware. It was just because things were so bad. When they were a bit better, it was great, and then they were just bad again. So you just do this roller coaster the whole time. And then I suppose as I got older and more into that journey, and the perimenopause symptoms just became more and more severe, I think my body was just not able to cope as well. So every time I reverted back, it just got worse. But here was the thing, as I was starting to improve my gut health, improve my overall internal health, and how my body was processing food and digesting it, there came a point where digestively, I could actually process a lot more food than I was able to before because I was actually looking after my gut health. So actually, when I had the burger and I had the alcohol, it wasn't so bad. But then it went through another wave and another phase. So it is just waves and phases. And I think it's just important to understand that each time you do it, each time you go through it, you learn a little bit more. So it got to a point where, for example, even now, I love that thought of not being able to have a social drink with people still gets me a little bit, and I will, but I've learned that actually, okay, it kind of affects me a little bit more, and it's probably the last thing I'm giving up right now. So I had a gin and tonic on Sunday because it was Father's Day, but I had one, and actually it wasn't too bad. But it was my daughter's wedding about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and I got absolutely, not in a good way. And do you know what? I really suffered. I had a great time because I was having a blast at the time, but it took me about a week to recover. And it was just like, okay, no, I cannot do this. So I think it's really important for anybody listening to say, I couldn't just go, right, I can't, that's it, switch off, can't do it, because that I just don't think is a realistic way of doing it. I do feel that you need to step in very gradually. So the women that I support now, I I say to them, look, it's about making the small changes, right? Again, so if you know that alcohol triggers you, And it's one of those, perhaps don't drink in the week, and perhaps think about having 1 or 2 drinks at the weekend and figure out which drink does less damage, right? And then gradually wean off. Things like food, if you're trying to include more protein, and it isn't about excluding food, I look at it as including. So all I'm doing is giving my body more of what it needs and less of what it doesn't need. So my clients, love bread. Why shouldn't you eat bread? It does. If it doesn't affect you, it affects me, but it doesn't affect you. Why should you give it up? So I just say, well, see how you get on. Have 1 slice, but have 2 or 3 eggs or something. So you've got your protein in there and your vegetables in there and your whatever. So you've got a full, complete meal. Don't. A lot of, again, my clients are South Asian, and they're like, we love our chapati and our dals and our rice and our curries, and I'm like, absolutely eat those, but just be mindful about perhaps what oils you're using, or how much of the rice and the chapatis you're having, and how much of the protein you're having, and the fiber. Small changes, that's the way I would say. Go gradually into it, unless of course your symptoms are horrific, in which case you kind of need to, I suppose you kind of need to make that choice.
A bigger overhaul is needed, right? And I think that that's kind of the reality for many people who maybe have a celiac disease, or for example, or some
Exactly.
heavy dairy intolerances, is that
Yes.
like I mentioned when I asked that question, it's like sometimes things are so extreme that even though you miss those things, your reality is far better without them in terms of the way you feel on a day-to-day basis. And I think a big point that you made as well was the awareness piece, right? It's like, okay, I know that alcohol affects me. And I say this to a lot of people that I work with as well. I'm like, if you're going to go out and have a meal on the weekend, like, you can't really complain about the consequences on Monday if you know. There's like, you know the choice you're making. And sometimes those consequences are okay to accept. Like, you drinking at your daughter's wedding, you're going to have that memory for a lifetime. So a couple of days of feeling a little bit rough is not super bad. But if you're doing that on a day-to-day basis because of you're navigating your lifestyle by drinking in the evening every day, and then compounding that with poor food choices as well, that's when it becomes consistent and kind of relentless in how you're going to feel as well. So I think, like you guys said, that awareness piece, knowing what triggers you more, and then maybe also leaning into the things that don't trigger you, like just because you have intolerances to gluten, but someone else can consume bread, it's not thinking, well, Meera doesn't eat bread, so maybe I won't. It's like, well, eat the foods that your body can tolerate and enjoy those things that life's giving you a gift there. So take advantage of it, right? On that note, I want to transition into another big piece, is that weight loss goals and body composition goals do not go away when a woman reaches their 30s or 40s or 50s. If anything, they become, they're just as prevalent as they would be in their 20s or 30s, except they're battling other things like menopause, for example, changes in metabolism, changes in hormonal profile as well. So how do you balance that, the balance between health and doing what's right for your body versus body composition? Because the automatic thing for most women is going to be drop my calories as low as possible, exercise as much as I can, and we're not going to say that's the best combination for someone going through menopause. So talk us through how you're balancing the two when that's still such a big goal for so many women who reach that type of age.
That's such a great question, really is. And I think I'm going to start right at kind of the beginning and look at sort of grassroots, what's actually going on in menopause. Okay. Because the basic stuff that we all know as kind of fitness instructors and personal trainers and people who work with men and women and everyone, there is a basic formula which we know works. Okay. But a lot of women are doing this basic formula and it's not working. So it's kind of like, okay, what's going on? I'm in calorie deficit and I'm running every single day for an hour and I'm still gaining weight. What on earth is going on? It's such a common thing. The thing that I want to just explain is what's happening inside your body. Okay. So that formula is still correct and it still works because we know it does. But inside your body, there are 3 sex hormones that we need to talk about, and then another chemical, another hormone called cortisol. So estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. Those are the 3 ones that we need to focus on first. Estrogen particularly. If we know, and it is a fact, that estrogen is actually called a master hormone, and the reason it's called a master hormone is because we have estrogen receptors in pretty much every part of our body, even down to a cellular level, in order to produce energy. Okay, it's needed for brain function. It's needed for absorption of different nutrients. It's needed to produce serotonin. It's needed for hair growth. It's needed for sleep. We need it for everything. Progesterone and testosterone also play that part. Okay, a very important part, particularly testosterone, in kind of that drive and that kind of the energy that we need. So all of those hormones during menopause, they're all going up and down. And during menopause, perimenopause, menopause, and postmenopause, estrogen in particular we lose the amount of estrogen we're producing, and we change the type of estrogen that we are producing as well. So it's like we've been going on supercharged petrol engine driving, and everything is wonderful, hunky-dory, and then suddenly somebody takes the petrol and changes it and puts diesel in, and then we're kind of going like a chug start and a chug start, right? And that is exactly what's happening. So it's not about what's coming in from the outside right now, it's what's happening inside. If that's happening, the other thing that's happening is also we're actually laying down fat. So our body during this time is trying to lay down fat. And the reason it's trying to lay down fat is because we actually know that the adipose fat is involved in the production of the type of estrogen we're now producing. Okay, so your body's trying to lay down fat, and we know we don't want to be laying down that fat because it can lead to so many other complications. So you're immediately fighting an uphill battle. You're fatigued and tired. Your body isn't absorbing as much as it was before, and it isn't doing it well enough. And then on top of it, your body's trying to lay down fat and you're trying to get rid of it, okay? So it's like trying to climb Mount Everest at the moment. Once we understand that, we then need to take a step back and think, okay, hold on a minute. I haven't talked about cortisol yet, okay? So this is where cortisol comes in. Cortisol, which is important. It's an important chemical. It's an important hormone. Our body produces it naturally. However, when we live the lives that we're living today, okay, that work, stress, that deadline, the kids, or the parents that you're looking after, or the friends that you have to, whatever, you've got deadlines, you've got things going on. It's a busy, busy, busy life. And we're almost led to believe the busier we are, the more successful we must be. That can produce something called chronic stress. So basically, cortisol never drops. It just keeps staying, drip, 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 drip. And in order for us to produce cortisol, we actually stop certain other very important chemical reactions happening, such as our own body's ability to produce estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. So cortisol comes into play really, really importantly. When we're exercising, we're producing a certain amount of stress in our body, which is needed and it's important. However, there are certain types of exercises that produce more stress than others. So if we're talking about running, okay, just as an example, that's quite a stressful exercise, or spinning. It's cardio, it puts a lot of stress on your body. It kind of is, that's what it's intended to do. But add that to the stress your body's already feeling. Add that combination to you're not eating enough. Add that combination to your body's not producing enough estrogen and progesterone, testosterone to help you. You suddenly got a perfect storm for your body going into a bit of a meltdown and actually laying down as much fat as possible, and nothing's working. So that's the basis from which we need to start. Once we can see that picture, we then can start to think, okay, wow, what do I do? How do I solve this problem? And I think that's the starting point. That's where we start. So we then look to see, okay, I need to fuel up better. I need to fuel up more. I need more protein because I need to keep building muscle because my muscle mass is reducing. I need to have some fats in my diet because actually fat is what's going to be this long-term endurance-based fuel, but it's also very important for my brain. I need to have enough carbohydrate, which is going to give me enough fuel to keep going, but not too much that it actually then gets stored as fat. And then I also need the fiber. I need my micronutrients like vitamin D and C and zinc and magnesium, all of those things. That's the first thing. Second thing is I need to think about how to exercise, but also reduce my stress levels. How on earth to do that? and that is where, and I know, it has been proven, it's scientifically researched, that some form of practice of breath work and meditation and mindfulness, like yoga, really helps to reduce your cortisol levels so that your body can then start to actually function better and use the cortisol it's needed for the activities you're going to do. So yes, you need to then think about doing maybe a shorter run or a shorter spin class, but actually bringing in something that's going to help to build those muscles up so that you are then able to burn that fat better, you're able to run better and spin better. So that's when your resistance training comes in. And it's actually the combination of all of that together. And it takes a bit of time to work out. So don't get overwhelmed by what I've just said, but you break it down and you do something very, very small, something really small, each change, each week, each month, to add to that wonderful kind of holistic way that we need to be living. But that's the key to not so much weight loss, but fat loss, because it's the fat that starts to lay down. And it really does. People come to me. I had a lady this morning, again, literally just like, how is this happening? Because I'm super active, and then when we looked at her food, I was like, okay, well, you're doing so well, but we just need to eat a little bit more protein. She had a salad, but no protein in it. I was like, oh, okay, well, we need to have, what about having some eggs or some lentils or something to that salad or fish? So it is just fine tuning, and starting small. But that, to me, that combination is like the whole picture. That's the whole thing. That's how it kind of works for me.
I really love that formula, and I think it was in depth, but it was much, much needed to give everyone an idea of how it's, like you said, full cycle. It's so holistic. It's like every single part of the puzzle makes a difference to how you're going to essentially look and feel. And whilst we're on the protein topic, I'm curious, you mentioned about the South Asian background, and protein is usually very, very hard to come by. A, because you don't grow up having too much, and also because a lot of you guys are vegetarian or vegan. So for those who are struggling with the protein aspect of it, especially those who are vegan and vegetarian, what are your recommendations to them?
Okay, so the thing that I say, and I was vegetarian. I went through a phase of being vegetarian, and I couldn't sustain it because I just wasn't able to get the nutrients I needed from the food I was eating. And actually now food for me is fuel. So I literally think of food in a very functional way, as functional as I possibly can. There is enjoyment, don't get me wrong, but it's functional. So if you are a vegetarian, and even if you're not vegetarian, the way to think about protein is to think about it like scaffolding. Okay, so don't just think about, right, I'm going to have 2 eggs, and then I'm going to have this, and then I'm going to have that. Think about layering it up. So at every time you eat, you add a little bit of protein to what you're eating. So yes, great, eggs in the morning. If you're a vegetarian, you eat eggs in the morning, fantastic. But how about also then when you're thinking about your snack or you're thinking about your lunch, let's add in some chickpeas or some hummus or some falafels or some pui lentils, 3 or 4 different types. Maybe for dinner, have some tofu if you're able to eat and consume tofu. But actually, don't just leave it at tofu. Add some other different types of lentils to it. Add your kind of cottage cheese if you're not a vegan is a great form. So literally thinking about adding little bits of protein. Hummus is another great one. Making dips with different types of beans is a great way. Just slowly adding little bits of protein into everything. There's one of my clients is brilliant. She actually makes a dal. So she makes a dal and then she just blitz some silken tofu into it. And nobody in the family knows what they're eating. And it's great. So she's actually got the tofu and she's got the lentil. So she's got the protein profile from both. The other thing to do as well is to add some soaked and ground, so ground and soaked chia and flax seeds into things. So if you're having porridge and oats have got protein in them, layer it up again. So you've got your complete proteins from your chia seeds and your flax seeds. Grind them up, soak them for a bit, get them in, and you've actually got, again, that scaffolding of protein. If you're a vegan, again, just leaving out the cottage cheese, but pretty much everything else there I've said is for you. I think with vegans and vegetarians, where we can go wrong is that we start to look for the processed foods to give us protein. So again, things like the corn or the plant-based burgers or the plant-based sausages, and I think sometimes I get very nervous because I say to people, look at the back of the ingredients and tell me what it is in there that you recognize. Because if you don't, then do you know what you're eating? That's just all we need to think about. Do you know what you're eating? You can make brilliant burgers with kidney beans or black-eyed beans and some vegetables and tofu kind of all mushed together. And I do loads of these recipes and things where you can just make it and you can batch freeze them. I know it's convenient, but sometimes I just think making choices for your food, you really need to think about, what am I eating? How is this fueling me? What is it doing for me to help me to gain that protein that I need? So yeah, it is just important to think about layering up and scaffolding.
I like that a lot. And as you mentioned, if you kind of change that perspective of the majority of the time, food is fuel, and the minority of the time, but occasionally it's just fun and whatever I want. I think, like you said, you can find a good blend between the two. And I can hear people right now saying, Meera, I hear you. I love the idea. I want to feel this way. I want to look that way. But where do I find the time to do all of this?
Yeah, no, I know. I get that all the time. I don't have the time. I don't have the time. And I know, I get it. I really, really do. Okay, I mean, the things I use, because I have a pretty full-on schedule. And I've added to that schedule by having my grandson that I look after now once a week on a Friday. So literally when he's there and he's gosh, he's just like turning into this, he's just like this full-time job. You literally can't leave him for a second unless he's asleep. So, there are days when and most of my days are packed. I love to be busy. That keeps me happy. I'm very lucky I do what I do. So I do balance that out. I do train every day, but it's in my diary. I have a trainer. I use a personal trainer every day. And everybody goes, wow, that's so expensive. And I'm like, yeah, but the cost of not having that personal trainer is me needing to fork out on medication or me not being able to live and work the way I want to. So and I'm not someone who will go to the gym by themselves. I won't. I know I'm a trainer. I can train, I can train people, but I need that person to help me. So you need to understand you. You need to understand what makes you tick and where is it going to fall down for you? I think that's the first thing. Where is it going to fall down for you? So for me, I don't have the motivation. So I actually invest in a personal trainer who is going to 1 hour a day, meet me in the gym. So 4 to 5 days a week, I'm there. Okay. In terms of food, I make sure that I prep. It's the only way. And I know it's boring, but the boring stuff is what works. It's boring. It gets quicker. The more you do it, it gets quicker because you can't be bothered to make 20 different meals, right? So you just end up making one batch and you keep it and you eat it and you enjoy it. So I prep on a Sunday. I do literally a batch of chicken. So we roast up chickens because I eat meat. So I roast up a couple of chickens and I know that's meals for X number of days. I kind of have some vegetables chopped and cut in the fridge, or I steam some and have them in the fridge, or I have boiled eggs on the go. So I've always got something in the fridge to hand. The other thing I do, and again, this sounds boring. I'm so sorry, but boring is good. It really is. I actually look at my diary and I know where my appointments are. And I know that there's a 10 or 15 minute gap here, and there's a 10 or 15 minute gap here. If I'm lucky, I get half an hour. And I know then, okay, I've got half an hour, so actually I can make some fried eggs. Quick, takes 2 minutes, okay? But I know I've only got 10 or 15 minutes here, so actually what I need to do there is have a really quick salad with chicken thrown in with a really simple dressing with olive oil and lemon juice. Woof it down, I'm done, okay? But I've eaten. I don't need to resort to being caught out. Also, when you're out, that's the other thing I hear a lot about as well, Elliot, is that, I'm out though, I'm out all day and where do I eat? Or I'm at the airport and I'm traveling and I'm like, okay, but there are some really good really good retail outlets out there now that actually offer really simple meals. You don't need to go crazy. If you don't want to have a sandwich, you don't need to have a sandwich, but you can actually get really good salads, you can get really good hot soups and all sorts of different options. So there is always an option out there, always. I think, like I said, for me, prep, look at your timetable and know where you're going and what's going on for the week ahead. And actually, wherever possible, when you're prepping, make sure your meals, wherever possible, are the same for everybody. So don't start making one meal for you, one meal for someone else. That's where you go wrong. It's so easy to get caught up in that whole thing, but so and so doesn't like that, but I just think you've got to try and make one meal for everyone, otherwise you're going to get really caught up. And know what your downfalls are. Recognize those. Recognize that you need a friend to help you go to the gym. You need to be part of a community to help you do yoga or whatever it is, swimming, or choose something that you enjoy doing. Like, it doesn't have to be expensive. You can just go out for a walk. You don't need to go to a gym. You can do strength training very well at home. There's so many things, dancing, whatever it is, but that movement is key.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. And I love the point on knowing yourself and knowing your downfalls. And I think so many people are like, well, I need to work on this. I get so many people that I speak to and they're like, before I work with you, I'm just going to try and lose some weight first. I don't have to rely on someone to be accountable for the rest of my life. And I'm like, you're literally telling me the problem that you have. I'm like, decide if that's the battle that you want to face. I'm like, you've got so much going on in your life. Do you like, and really realistically, the amount you're paying for a coach or whatever really doesn't really scratch the surface that much. So it's this ego based thing of saying, well, I need to be able to hold myself accountable. Otherwise, how am I simply going to live? And then you miss out and get the results because you're like, well, it's actually too hard to hold myself accountable. And I'm the same, like, I'm never going to learn a language if I just try and do self-revision. And that's why I choose to have a teacher. Like, it's just not going to happen. Like, and I know myself, and I would love to be like, yes, I'm elite in everything and I can do this all on my own, but I just can't. And I think sometimes facing reality is one of the most important things.
Oh, isn't it? Isn't it is? And I think, I think what's interesting is doing what we're doing, working with people, actually gives you a lot of insight into yourself too. And I always say to my clients, I learn so much from you because I'm then able to identify, my goodness, I'm having the same conversation with myself. And actually, we need to stop that conversation and actually just focus on enjoying that moment, enjoying that time, and actually saying, yeah, all right, I am one of those people that needs help with this. And that's fine. It's fine to need help and guidance. It's actually okay, isn't it? It's okay not to be okay at everything. It's absolutely fine.
Yeah, and another aspect of that as well is accepting whether you're willing to do the required work in order to get what you actually want, right? It's like if you can't stand the sight of doing your own meal prep or going to the gym X amount of times a week, then I'm sorry, but you might have to give up these super ambitious body composition goals. But as long as that's okay and you just want to be in shape, you just want to have a flat waistline, you want to fit nicely in your clothes, totally fine. But if you want the next level of things, you kind of have to do, like you said, the boring things time and time again. And I think that those two things, understanding your downfalls and also being willing to accept what your actions will get you, are going to be super super powerful for anyone on this type of journey, full stop, especially like a menopausal journey as well, I'm sure.
Oh, you're so right, Elliot. Absolutely correct. It couldn't have said it any better than that. And it is that realistic expectation. Let's just get into that realistic expectation because when you're going through menopause, perimenopause, and even when you get into postmenopause, you are different. And that is something, it's navigating that change. That's what this journey is about from menopause, perimenopause through to postmenopause. And you could be living in this stage of your life for over half. So for me, if I live till I'm 80, God willing, I will have lived 40 years of my life, more of my life in perimenopause, menopause, and postmenopause than I will have not. So we've got to start to learn to become comfortable. And, just to kind of be really positive about this, I have to say, is once you've come out of that perimenopause and menopause journey and you're postmenopausal, as I am now, and I have been for 4.5, nearly 5 years, there is this sense of liberation and there's this sense of just no BS, right? You just can't tolerate anymore. It just is brilliant. So you actually start to get a little bit of a reality check with yourself, and actually you realize how much rubbish you're telling yourself all the time. So it's a really enlightening journey, and it is one with lots of creativity. So if you can navigate those changes well through peri and menopause and get into postmenopause, the world is a very, very different and actually very lovely, lovely place to be.
I love that we finished on such a high and such a positive. Meera, I could speak to you for hours, but I am going to respect your time. And for the listeners who are tuning in right now, where's the best place to find you if they want to keep up with the work that you're doing?
Oh, thank you so much. So you can find me on Instagram. I'm the most active on there because I do love Instagram. And I'm there as Meera Bhogal, Meera Bhogal. I also have a online platform called The Training Club, which again has an Instagram handle of The Training Club. So you can find me on there. And my website is mirasmadefromscratch.co.uk. But yeah, those are the kind of places. I am on Facebook and places like that, but not super active on there. Please come along, and if people message me, I will always message back. I'm very happy to talk to people.
Amazing. I'll pop all of that in the show notes below. But Meera, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you, Elliot. Thank you for having me on.